Dearly redheaded, we are choosing consciousness today to get through this thing called grief. Interesting word, grief. It means love, which makes for a mighty good joke. But I'm here to tell you, there's nothing else. Just joy. And if the big picture tends to bring you down, go crazy once your life goes. Woo!
All right, episode 3 with Shell. The one thing that happened before he was fully moved out was I had a discussion with my son where my son didn't understand how proactive I was trying to be by handling it, having him move out before my son came home from where he lives, by this kid not taking advantage of, here I'm thinking I'm being, fair and honest or whatever, or, honest. I don't know if I meant honest. I just mean I'm trying to not affect my kids. I realize now that my kids had been involved for 2 months. So my son came to me, and what we talked about made me furious, anger. I had to leave the house. I went to a friend's house. This is during that week. I don't remember the order of events. In retrospect, absolutely would call it CPTSD rage, but at the time, I was just trying to process. I've worked on emotional regulation for a long time, so I got my emotions in order, went back to the house, and he had called Rob, my therapist, and then Rob and I get on the phone, and Rob says, "Your son tells me you're suicidal." I said, "Rob, I'm not suicidal. I'm homicidal. I'm so over this shit." And you do play a role. I know the role I played in this. So Rob led me to believe that he had comforted my son. And we ended up, my son, I believe it was Christmas Day, trying to enjoy Christmas after all this, and my son ended up going to his long-term friend's house, and I said, "Go, do what you need to do." Got him a hotel room. I just didn't want to take away from, again, enjoying my mother. My mother was my best friend, and that was my focus. Everything else was a distraction. So that event over those couple of months, and realizing I had fallen into this soup again, I was on fumes. I was on absolute fucking fumes. And then January, February, March, I worked. It was tax season. Worked to restore my healing. Had every intention of using THC when my mom died, so I don't remember. I know in December I wasn't using substance because it just, for those of us who used, well, I never used it like to a detriment, but I was very cognizant of how I was using it. And around December, to be around my son, I didn't use it. And then January, February, March, I had no distractions besides caring for my mother. And that's kind of when you came in the mix, right?
Yeah. It was the very end of March or early April.
So I had shared with you that event.
At the time, briefly, at the time, it wasn't in depth. That came later.
Okay. Well, I would have no reason to get in depth because in my mind, it was behind me to the extent
Right.
it could be. So, Mom, so you remember, and I remember as Mom started to die, which was mid-April, I did start to use substance again. You and I did. You told me that I was grieving, not raging. I'm just reminding you, and you can concur. These are conversations we've had in the past. True?
Yeah, I mean, I saw you as grieving. My interactions with you, I mean, it just made sense to me that this was, you were in the midst of grieving your mother, even though she was still alive. You were preparing your body and your mind.
And you said I was clear about voicing I needed a week off when she died, that I wanted to sleep, and that I didn't want to be left alone. I had been clear about that with you, even though it wasn't an expectation of you, correct?
Correct. Yeah, you weren't asking me to facilitate. You basically were just very verbal about your desires of what you would need at the time of your mom's passing, which made sense. I mean, the death is not an easy thing to recover from sometimes, especially when you are the sole caregiver of this person and as close as you were. And let's not forget, caregivers to people with dementia, that's on a different level of care. It's a different depth of it. So, I mean, it would have made sense to me if you said I would need 6 months of intensive care.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I subsequently took that, but as we know, we're building up to something. So, yeah, I mean, at the time, I just, because I had been in, working on myself for so long. But the problem arose when, and there was some animosity with the aide. She was getting very attached to my mom. She was very jealous of you. And I was trying to be cognizant and have empathy for her experience, because she was also losing my mother, who she was very attached to, uncomfortably attached to. But, I got it. I wasn't judging her, and I wanted her to be able to. I needed her. And then you and this is a jump, but I'm trying. I had reached out. The door was always open to my siblings and my nieces and nephews and their children, and there wasn't a lot of visiting going on. There never was. But when Mom started to die, the aide suggested I get one of my siblings involved, who had much more involvement with my mother than the others. And I had not wanted to do that, or I don't know if I didn't want to do it, but I was guided to think it was going to be, my intention would be misunderstood, and it was. That sibling opened it up to the rest of the family that had already made amends with my mother and said their goodbyes from their perspective. But I understand when somebody's death is really imminent. Now, guilt comes a calling, and people scurry, which is great for them, ha ha he he, but it wasn't so great for me. So one of my other siblings, around the end of April, came into the mix, and that was somebody that very, very challenging for me to be around because of our history. And I was trying to do the right thing by he and my mother, but it ended up being what I feared in the back of my mind. He ended up really bonding with my son, and it ended up being very detrimental to me. And you were there for that. And I remember you said you had a couple awkward interactions with him, and your vibe on his energy was not. You had a very you say it, because I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I just didn't feel safe, I guess is the best way to put it. I didn't feel safe around him. I don't know why. I don't know him. I can't even tell you what he looks like. I have no memory of his physicality. I just remember feeling just very uncomfortable, and like I had to almost be protective and soon leave. I did not feel comfortable spending the time around him.
At one point, you said he followed you out to your car.
Yeah, I went out to my car for, I don't know, air or something, just a break. And when I came around the other side of it, he like popped up out from the other side of my vehicle, and started talking to me, asking me questions about why I was there, how long have I been there. Again, I have a very vague memory of it, because again, I tend to just like get overwhelmed by what I'm feeling in the moment, that when I'm feeling unsafe, it's like I can't hear what's happening. The feeling is taking over. And I remember he put his arm around me, and I remember feeling like shelled, very tight. Like I have to get out of here.
What's the word you used?
Shelled. Like I had to shell up. Got it. That's what I felt like. I needed protection. Like this stranger has his arm around me. He's walking with me. He just came out from behind the car. I don't know what his intention is. Maybe it's a good interaction. Maybe I'm reading the interaction wrong. Again, I'm not always. I just got to go on what I'm feeling, and I just did not feel good. That just took me way off balance, and to me, it felt dangerous.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I don't remember. I remember interacting with him. I remember smoking with him, because that was both our way, well, at least my way of dealing with him. I didn't know how I couldn't be around him and not smoke. I just couldn't.
Well, I think, because I think that night I smoked with you a little bit after that interaction outside. I remember being on the back porch and just taking a hit of whatever you were smoking. And then I got sucked inside myself. And it was then that I knew, like, I was like, okay, I gotta get out of here right now, because I get very introspective.
Yep. So I remember with him, sharing with him what I wanted to read, gravesite at my mother's. I don't remember touching him in any way, shape, or form. I remember talking to him very little. It was very evident to me that he hadn't grown an inch. I've in the history, when I've described it, I've said a pubic hair. And I just needed to get through it, and got through it. He ended up leaving, I think, a couple of days before she passed. And I had said to my son, who also was leaving, I had asked him to stay. I had the plan in place a long time before she died that I wanted to sleep for a week. I don't know how I knew that I would need to sleep for a week, but my instinct a long time prior was to be left alone to sleep for a week to rebound. So I had asked my son. He said he'd come back when she died, and this is where dissociation comes in, and I don't know if I let my son off the hook about coming back. I don't think I would have, but knowing me, I might have. But I was trying to reassure that even though they were leaving, that I would not be alone when my mom did die. So how are we on episode 3, Brian? 15 minutes. All right, we've got time here. So then... All right, so May 2nd, about 10 o'clock, my mom dies. Now, again, I'm high. I'm having unbelievable spiritual experiences where that's concerned, and I want to separate the spiritual from the shitty, so I'm going to stay with the shitty. Someday I'll get involved in the experience I was having that night. I ended up... in my living room, 2 rooms away from my mother as the aide was tending to her. My mother did not want me to see her in the end. I was very aware of that. I don't want to get into the reasons, I'll cry. But it was just known that the aide was gonna handle the bitter end, if you will. And I started to have very incredible experiences. I was very aware that I didn't have a pen and paper. I wrote things on Facebook about the experience. I was trying to figure out where to write so I'd remember what I was experiencing, because my history was I didn't remember when it was over. Mom... can you take that out? Take that out, the name I just said, please. The aide informed me that it was time. I went outside her room door. I said goodbye to her. And after she passed on, I looked in. She had a smile on her face, and that was it. So she ended up... her body ended up being removed from my house somewhere around midnight that night, I think. So it's the end of the 2nd going into the 3rd. So this is the part that gets really fuzzy, because it was largely, I went in and out of consciousness for 5 days. I remember being alone and reaching out to people. And I had an arsenal, a small arsenal of pot. And I remember being guided to have somewhere to go. And I had bought infused pot. So whether I used it or not over those days, I still don't know. The reason I was guided to have somewhere to go, I think, is because I wasn't going to use alcohol. And I just wanted a higher level of something for the pain should the regular pot not be able to kill it. And when I say regular pot, it was still medicinal pre-rolled pot. So let's say I had 2 packets of both. I really don't remember. and the way I had not had anything to drink since April of 22, so it had been 2 years. I would not have even contemplated alcohol at that point, if you will. So I have evidence of some of my behaviors in those few days. I found out subsequently, and I'm leading up to how I found out, but there had to be a significant time that I was either unconscious, asleep, or just on my back, because I subsequently, after 6 days, I was hospitalized, and I had done extraordinary damage to my liver and kidneys. I've heard a multiple people's opinion on that I could have been flat on my back and affected the blood flow. I've heard that rage goes to the kidneys and liver. I don't know. I had some physical activity that could have hurt my liver and kidneys that I'm building up to. But my recollection of the few days leading to my rage event was very next to nothing. I don't think I ate. I don't think I drank water. At some point in there, I had put my cats up in my attic, and I had left the back door open for the dogs to go out to pee. I don't believe I was feeding them either. I don't know. So I have evidence that I was communicating at least to the 4th with others. And a handful of people, Jim Mandrinos, who I had on a couple weeks ago, spoke to me reaching out to him. I reached out to another friend of mine who knew I was having a psychedelic experience, knew I was on in a different dimension, trying to share with him what was going on. And Jim chose to argue with me because I was argumentative. This friend chose to try and understand. Another friend of mine said she just thought I was drinking. So I got a little bit of information from those few days, but at some point I sort of dried up and didn't talk to anybody. And that was like the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. There was a well check. I've only just recently been able to look at the police records. There's a well check on the 5th. I was very not I just wanted the cop to leave me alone. And I'm sure that I was haunted by the situation with the cops prior with the roommate. I can't imagine that went over well. And then I just found out, and this got me, and it's going to get me again. But it turns out on the 8th, before I raged, and I don't know enough about this to be able to tell you exactly what I did. I've tried to find out, and people were freaked out by what I did. So they're very apprehensive to talk about it, I guess. I don't know. But there was a well check on the day I raged, called in by my ex-husband. And when I read that in the last couple of weeks, I got to tell you, I don't know if the officer told me that he called it in. I don't know why he thought it was appropriate that he call it in. I don't know why he was involved. But I'll tell you what, when I raged, he was in there. So I don't know what was said to me during the well check. I have no recollection of either one. So sometime after the second well check, I went full into rage. And the police report said the police officer noticed that I had already started throwing things, or he wasn't witnessed me throwing, but there were things on my front lawn. So I was then, I guess, I don't know how long I raged for, and I don't remember a good portion of it. But I would say I threw at least 1/3, if not more, of the contents of my home outside of my home. And I don't remember what I did on the first floor, but I have a good, I was delusional and hallucinating, I guess, but it was my own mind, so they are memories. I remember raging against the aide, and the aide in my head was talking to me in my own way of talking to somebody if I was irritated with them, but it was her voice. I remember raging against a friend of mine who was being abused by her husband. I remember raging against the roommate, and I remember the most damage I did was I made it so I could not access my foyer. I filled the steps going down to my foyer with furniture, clothes, towels, sheets, whatever. I imagine. I've seen pictures, but it just, I was trying to protect myself, I assume, on my second floor from the front door. And I think that's tied to, because a couple really hard truths were learned in my foyer. And I remember just blatant lies. I had one visual that he subsequently lied to me about, and that was the point where my brain, it was probably like 2003, and my brain had already become so dissociated. The sky wasn't blue, the grass wasn't green, so I have to assume that I was separating myself on the second floor from the first floor. Threw things out the window, upstairs, my bedroom, down to the Bilko door, which was the roommate's entrance. It was torturous. I don't remember if I was crying, but my point in sharing all this, that could have also hurt my liver and kidneys in addition to... Like, just lost it?
Hello.
Hey, Brian thinks...
That's okay.
You're, all right, so you're on point? We're both well? Okay. I'm putting myself there now, and I just remember... And I think this is important, I think this is going to be important to people that have rage events. In my head and hearing and re-experiencing what I had been through. I mean, the rage was very warranted. I hope you all know that. This was a warranted, pent-up, horrendous rage of just never having my voice heard, or however you want to look at it. And so I assume after I raged I would rest. I don't know, but I do know at one point, and I'm starting to wonder how close it was to a near-death experience. I would imagine there is a component of that which can also cause rage. And I don't necessarily want to talk about that now. I think that's something I can talk about after I know more about it. But I have to believe that I chose to come back, because I did come back, and I woke myself up out of the stupor I was in. Again, I liver, kidneys, dehydration, whatever. and I assessed my situation, and I'm putting myself there now, so bear with me. Shelly, you good?
Mm-hmm.
So I assessed very quickly that the only way to get help would be to go out my window, which I was in my primary bedroom, and I stepped out into the overhang of the first floor, like over the deck. So the roof that was over my first floor porch, I stepped down onto that. Makes sense?
Yes.
And my house, or my former house. So then I called out for my neighbor. I lived, I had 6 acres of property. My neighbor was well over to and she happened to hear me. Now, this is where, I know that my memories are not accurate because I've gathered enough information and spoken to her, but my recollection is she came, she was unnerved, man. She was pacing, she was on the phone, she was brutally upset. She's told me subsequently, and I will tell you, I felt very calm. She said it was like I was super calm. And I have to believe it was super cathartic because I had been sitting on a lot of this stuff for a long time. So I remember wanting confirmation that my children were alive and that my pets were alive, because I think in that state of mind, you must be concerned that you could hurt somebody, right? So I remember that, whether it was something I conveyed. I know I didn't get an answer. My neighbor subsequently told me that she gathered that all of a sudden I was just tired of being on the roof, and not the top roof. I say this very purposefully. I was about, 8 feet off the ground. So my bushes were a place where I envisioned, and this is where, I don't think it was hallucinations. I think they were delusions, because in my mind, it was the faces of the 2 EMS workers. Now, they hadn't arrived yet, but my mind puts it that they asked me to jump into the bushes. And there's also a spiritual part here, so I don't want to go there and confuse you all. But I did jump into my bushes. Now, that ended up being viewed as a suicide attempt. I'm here to tell you it wasn't. I wanted off the fucking roof. And that was what my neighbor said too. She said, it looked like I just got tired of being on the roof. So I do remember the EMS getting me out of the bush, getting me in the ambulance. And I was remarkably calm, but I don't remember I don't remember anybody reassuring me, telling me my kids were all right. Everything I wanted to hear, that wasn't happening. So this is pivotal, because, and I will never forget this, and I have to believe it was real because I needed it to be. So I had a circular driveway, and we're coming out of the circular driveway in the evidence, and I look onto my property, and I have one of my dogs has this thing that he does when he just jumps like 2 feet in the air. And I saw him doing that. So I at least was going to the hospital knowing he was okay. You with me?
Yeah.
Can we stop and start there?
Already?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck. Okay, we're going to start and stop again.
Thank you for listening and supporting Natural Born Redhead. If you follow the bouncing balls, please like and subscribe. If you know someone interested in sparing others grief and inciting joy, message me on Facebook or reach out via my website, Natural Born Redhead. J-Ma.